Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of your Midday Love Break. I'm so excited to have you here with us today. We have a really exciting topic, and I can't wait to dive in. We are talking about something that so many couples that come into my practice complain about. I actually don't know a single person in my personal life that doesn't struggle with this at one point or another. And so I'm really excited to bring this topic to you. Today we are talking about how to have an epic sex life when your sex drive does not match your partner's. I just know this happens for so many couples and for so many different reasons. That's why we need to be talking about this. And, you know, for those of you who may be joining us and watching for the first time and you've never met me, hi, welcome. I'm Robyn D'Angelo. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Laguna Hills, California, and I'm the founder of the Happy Couple Expert. By the name, you can probably imagine that it is really, truly just my passion and my mission on this planet to help couples learn to navigate and master the messiness of couplehood together and to create their most epic relationships. And I do that so many different ways, and one of which is this weekly midday love break. This is really just a time where you can come in here, take a break, right? We take lunch breaks, we take coffee breaks. Take a break and really focus on your relationship and not just focus on all the things that don't work, but we're focusing on giving you the tips and the tools and the strategies to get to where you want to be. So important. So for those of you that are excited and you're jumping on and you are ready to do this, I am too. I'm actually going to bring on a guest today. My colleague and friend, her name is Megan Meganson. She is a sex therapist. I have my notes here because I don't want to leave anything out. And I have tons of questions for her, you guys. And these questions have come from you and some might be my own too. But so she comes to us from the Center for Couples and Sex Therapy. And so I'm going to let her come on and share a little bit more about herself with you guys. Let's see if I can. There we go. Get on to join us, and we'll just wait a second for her to pop in here. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Can you hear me?
Great, I can. I'm just going to pop my volume up a little bit.
Perfect. So
Awesome.
Welcome, Megan. I'm so excited to have
Thank
you here
you.
with us.
Yes.
I am just such a big proponent, and I'm very transparent about I don't have all the answers. So I do my best to bring on those who know a lot more than I do. And so I'm just very honored to have you here with us today as our sex therapist, our sex and relationship expert.
Thank you so much for having me. Full disclosure, I don't claim to have all of the answers either. So
Yay.
that's definitely not what this is about. But I'm really excited to collaborate with you and see what we can create together as we talk about sex and relationships today.
Awesome. I try to keep this around 30 minutes, but who knows? Let's see where we go today.
Yeah.
I have a ton of questions, but before we dive in, why don't you just kind of share with our audience kind of where you're at and, you know, what made you want to really focus on sex therapy as a specialty?
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that question, first of all. So a little bit of history about my journey in this field. I started my career as a couples therapist. So I'm trained in a model of couples therapy called emotionally focused couples therapy, which is a wonderful evidence-based approach to working with couples. So it's research-based. We have evidence that shows that it works, and it inspires me every day that I do it. But as I got a few years into my career doing this work with couples, I was really astounded by my lack of training in sexual issues. And even more basic than that, just my lack of training in how to talk about sex, period, in a clinical setting and in a personal setting as well. So I started looking for people who were trained in both, like people who could do really good couples therapy and do sex therapy. And I realized that they didn't really exist. At the time, I was in a huge city. I lived in Houston, Texas at the time. And there were only a couple of people in a city of like 6 million who were offering this service, which is, you know, dumbfounding. So I decided to dive in and go for it and do the sex therapy training. And that's sort of my mission now. You know, I'm really passionate about finding ways to integrate sex therapy with evidence-based couples therapy so that we can talk about your relationship, we can talk about your sexuality, we can talk about your sexual concerns, and we can do it all in a way that's going to create positive change in your life.
Right.
I love
that.
it. It's great work.
Oh, yeah, and I appreciate that you saw that there was a need for something, right? I mean, how many couples I'm sure you were seeing coming in that's like, this is a topic as a couples therapist, like this is a topic that always comes up, right?
Right.
So I really just want to commend you for taking that step further.
Thank you.
Yeah, and doing the work that it takes so that you can feel really confident when your couples come to you and they can feel confident. So and where are you located today?
So today I'm in Portland, Oregon, and my center is the Center for Couples and Sex Therapy. And Portland is very different than Houston, but I love it. And one thing I want to say, Robyn, before we move away from like the couples therapy, sex therapy, integration piece, I just want to say to folks who are listening that it's actually highly unlikely if you go to couples therapy that your therapist is going to ask you about your sexual relationship. And this has everything to do with the fact that they probably have zero training in what to do with what you say to the question, how are things going in your sex life? So I just want to say that if you're having sexual problems or concerns in your relationship and you're going to couples therapy, I want to empower you to be the person to voice it. Don't wait for your therapist to ask, because they're probably not going to ask. If you're struggling, say something. And then it's your therapist's job as the professional to either say, we can totally work on that here, or let me refer you to somebody who can really help you address that problem.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad. I hope everyone really heard that and can take that in. So
that's my my 2-minute soapbox.
I mean,
don't suffer in silence.
No, never. I love that. So I'm going to dive right in because I have a ton of questions that
let's do it.
I have for you that I've gotten from other people just by letting them know what we were going to be talking about today. So
awesome.
First and foremost, what is a normal amount of sex that couples are supposed to be having? I hear this all the time. What's normal, Robyn?
Robyn, it's so funny that that's the question that you're starting with, because as I was thinking about our talk last night, I even wrote a little Post-it note to myself this morning that says, start by talking about normal sexual desire.
Love it.
Because I think like this is where it starts for us. And the answer to that question is that there is absolutely no normal amount of sex that you should be having or should be wanting. There is no research out there that says, you know, this is a healthy sexual desire and this is unhealthy, or this is a good amount of sex or this is a bad amount of sex. If you've heard it, if you've read it, throw it away. It's total garbage. Wow. The truth is, however you feel and if you're happy with however you feel, if you're satisfied, that's what's normal for you.
Got it. Okay.
The tricky part is how to negotiate that in relationships where you and your partner are happy with different levels or different types of desire for sex. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. I want to highlight one thing, though, that I heard you say was that there's no normal amount of sex and no normal amount of desire. And I think that's important for people to hear, right? Where it's like, oh, but my sex drive isn't as high, or, oh, mine is too high. And there is no normal. It's just what is yours, is what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the key distinguisher when it comes to like if you're asking yourself, is there something abnormal about my level of sexual desire? Is there something abnormal about the amount of sex I'm having in my life? The question I want you to ask yourself is your desire, or is the amount of sex you're having causing you distress? If it's causing you distress in any way, then there is something there that's not working. There's something there that needs to be addressed. If you're not in distress about wanting zero sex or wanting sex 5 times a day and reaching out to your partners or to people to get that sexual need met isn't causing anyone any difficulties, like, great. Like that is who you are, and you have every right to own that and be totally confident claiming that as the truth for you.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I can't tell you how many times I've had couples come in that are young, healthy, maybe like newly married, but have some other like external project, whether it's careers, whether it's something that they're really focused on, and they're like, we're not having very much sex and we're actually okay with that. Is something wrong with that?
No, nothing's wrong with that. Yeah. Great. It sounds like life is working for you.
Got it. And that's why I'm like, I'm so glad to hear you say this. So, but here's the thing though. I'm looking at my questions real quick. What would you say then are some of them? I mean, I know normalcy is one of them, but what are some other misconceptions when it comes to just couples and sex in general? I know this is a really broad question.
Yeah. Whew, that's a big one. I'll just share, like, I think that there are so many answers to that question. So I'll just sort of talk about what comes up for me as you ask it. Sure. You know, one misconception is that the person in the relationship, so if we're looking at a monogamous relationship between two people with desire discrepancy. So desire discrepancy just means that one person has a lower level of desire for sex and the other partner has a higher desire for sex. Okay. One misconception is that the person with the higher desire is right and the person with the lower desire is wrong or broken or defective or not measuring up. And I think that's a societal view, really. You know, I think that's something our culture sort of tells us that we need to be these sex machines that we're not, that many of us are not. Right. So that's one big misconception. Another misconception that I see quite a lot is that couples get too focused on intercourse. So when they think, when they think about having sex in their relationship and what that means, what they're equating that to in their mind is intercourse. And when your outcome for success only includes one activity or one option, you're probably going to fail or you're not going to measure up to your own expectations. So a lot of the work that we do in sex therapy is helping couples to expand their repertoire of what they can do to connect in a physically intimate way that satisfies the need for sexual connection. So it might be like taking a shower together or, giving each other sensual massages, making out, cuddling more. Like we want to add as many non-orgasm focused activities onto the menu as we can so that we have a greater likelihood of being successful when we do have time to connect in a physical way. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's making me think about, I did an interview series one time and I was, now I can't remember exactly the topic, but I interviewed Dr. Lily Zahner and she's in Colorado and she talked about non-sex sex. Like she has come up with an entire ebook on like non-sex sex, on how can you be sexual or how can you have intimacy without sexual intercourse. So I love that you're separating the two, because what you're doing is you're really giving people, like, you're broadening their vocabulary is what I hear.
Yeah, broadening vocabulary and expanding options.
Yes. More options is always good.
More options is, definitely always good and sometimes necessary. So if you think about what happens when maybe you have your first child or one partner is experiencing a medical problem and they're taking a medication that inhibits sexual functioning. All of a sudden things are happening in our lives and in our bodies that makes intercourse physiologically impossible. And if we don't have other items on the menu to choose from to help us connect in a sexual way, our relationship can sort of spin into chaos. So for so many reasons, having non-sex sex, having those options on the menu is vital to having an epic sexual relationship.
And I want to ask this because we're on this topic and it was one of my questions and I made some notes. What are some of the other things that can impact someone's sex drive? So you mentioned, right, like having children, maybe an illness that's being treated by so can you talk about some things that maybe people haven't thought about, like, oh my gosh, this could totally be impacting my libido, my sex drive?
So one statement that I find myself making multiple times a week in my clinical practice is that sexual desire is so complicated because it is literally impacted by every facet of our life. There is nothing that we experience in our life and the world that doesn't in some way impact our ability to show up as sexual people.
Wow.
So the clear, the clear correlates are like having a baby, or the clear correlates are things that directly involve your genitals.
Okay.
Right. So if it's something that like directly involves your genitals, it makes sense that, okay, like maybe that would impact my desire. But the other things that can impact our desire are stress at work. If I've got like a boss who's breathing down my neck and making my life like miserable, I'm probably not going to be able to get into relaxed enough state of mind to want sex. Or maybe you're dealing with like a parent who is ill and dying, or you're dealing with financial stress. Or maybe you come from a very conservative religion that tells you sex is bad and dirty, and you've got all of these messed up beliefs about sexuality in your head. Any aspect of our life can impact our ability to be present and focused in our bodies, which then makes it nearly impossible to access sexuality in a meaningful way.
Gosh, and we forget how we forget how powerful our brains are. I forget who I heard say something about like our brain is our biggest sex organ.
Absolutely. Yeah. It all starts with the brain.
And so I'm curious too, when we talk about, because I've done a lot of research on this as well, and I know hormones play a big role for men and women. And I remember hearing a study about like as men get older, their estrogen actually goes up and their testosterone goes down. I don't know if you can speak to anything about like the hormones and kind of with aging, right? We have menopause for women. And so I don't know if there's anything that you want to share with our listeners on how that impacts.
Yeah. I mean, of course, our hormone levels and pretty much anything that's happening in our body physiologically can impact our desire for sex. It can impact our ability to function sexually. But as a general rule of thumb, the probability that hormones are causing your sexual problems is very low.
Really?
It's much more likely that your sexual problems are caused by performance anxiety or being too stressed or tension within the relationship or a side effect of a medication. The likelihood that it's a hormone imbalance, while it may be true, and I'm not saying don't investigate it if you feel like that might be happening for you.
Sure.
Statistically, it's just not as prevalent as all of the other things that we're talking about. But that being said, of course, as we age, things are going to change within our bodies.
Yeah.
And all of our bodies are different. So there's no, it's not as simple as saying, well, your testosterone drops, so your sex drive goes down. Because testosterone or estrogen are not the only things changing in your body. So many things are changing about your body as you age. So I think my quick piece of advice on that one is if you're noticing a lot of changes happening in your body and you have questions about those changes or concerns, find a medical provider who is sex positive, right? So look on a medical provider's website and see if they write anything about sexual functioning or sexual dysfunction. Ask them, call and say, I want to know if this provider is able to talk to me about my sexual health concerns. Wow. And if you get a sense that that provider is not going to talk to you about that, because many are also too personally uncomfortable to voice it, do your due diligence. Find a provider who says, absolutely, like I will talk to you about sex. I will answer your questions about sexual functioning, and then lay out your list of concerns, your list of questions, and see if some of those hormone changes might be impacting you in a negative way.
Oh, I hope all of our listeners and watchers are really absorbing that and feeling empowered to go to their physicians. Because I know we oftentimes in our society, we have this idea of the doctor knows best. And if they're not asking the questions, it must not be important for them to know.
That kills me. That kills me. Because there's a definite parallel here. I think this is the way sexuality really touches on all of our truths, regardless of if I'm a therapist, if I'm a physician, if I'm a preacher. We all have our own sexual stories that might make sex hard to talk about. Right. So if your provider isn't asking you about sex, I want you to hear me when I say that is not about you as the patient. Like that is not about like, that does not mean that sex isn't important or that your sexuality might not be impacted by whatever condition you're talking about. That is 100% about the provider not doing their due diligence and asking you about your sexual health, which is a vital component of your overall physical health and well-being.
Life and relationships. And that leads me to my next question is, if a couple feels like they're struggling in their sexual relationship, what other parts of their life will be impacted, do you think?
So there's a statistic that I'm totally going to butcher right now because I'm the worst with numbers. But there is a sexuality researcher. His name is Barry McCarthy. You can type his name into Amazon and you'll see a list of excellent books come up that he's written. And he found that, okay, again, like don't quote me on the numbers, but when sex is going well in your relationship, it has something like a 15 to 20% positive impact on your overall life and relationship. Wow. So it's kind of small. Yeah. But when sex is dysfunctional or you're avoiding sex or there's tension around sex, it can have, I think it's high. It's like between a 70 and 85% negative impact on your relationship, right?
That's
so the
incredible.
Discrepancy, yeah, it's really incredible. If sex is going well, it's like a great part of your relationship, but it doesn't make a world of difference in your life. If sex is not going well, it's kind of catastrophic.
Wow.
It can create tension in the relationship. And the more tension you have in the relationship and the more unfulfilled you're feeling as a sexual person, it's just going to seep into other areas of your life, right?
Totally.
So you're probably going to be more irritable, which might make your job performance, suffer, and your friendships will suffer, and you'll be snappy with your kids, or you'll be withdrawn or depressed. I mean, like I could go on forever. It's really important. And if it's impacting you in a negative way, I just want to like validate that is real.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did say when I was kind of prepping kind of my community and doing videos, I said, I have a feeling Megan's really going to normalize a lot of this and a lot of the frustration or the confusion or the concern or the fear around this stuff, because it's so uncomfortable and it can we can feel so like helpless sometimes of like, well, what in the world am I supposed to do? So that's kind of taking me down this other road of, I'm thinking about a lot of the parenting couples that I talk with and I hear from, and they talk about like, everything was so different before we had kids. What's normal once we have kids? Like, when are we supposed to start having sex again? Is it ever going to feel the same? Are our desire levels like, and I know you talked earlier about not being a normal, but can you talk a little bit about maybe what parents can expect? I don't know if that's even a valid question.
I think it's a totally valid question. Okay. Of course, there are a million different ways to answer it. So I know I'm not going to touch on everything that's true. But in regards to the changes that happen in the female body, those changes are going to vary depending on what kind of delivery. Do you have a vaginal delivery? Do you have a C-section? Did you tear during your vaginal delivery and require like a bunch of stitches in your genitals? All of these questions are going to be really important as you're trying to understand like how your own physical body is changing and what kind of healing you need before you can become sexually active again through intercourse. So I'm going to defer to your OB-GYN.
Yes.
Your OB-GYN should absolutely be able to walk you through, okay, like if you're ready to start oral sex now, you can do it, go for it, but don't do intercourse yet. You need a little more time to heal. And now you're ready to start intercourse, so go for it. Typically, the number that I hear quoted to me from OB-GYNs I work with is like between 6 to 12 weeks are when most women can become sexually active again, some sooner, some later. Again, it depends on what your body has been through. The major component around childbirth is how your stress level goes through the roof. Yeah. And I think even more impactful than the physiological changes are the emotional changes. You're stressed, you're not sleeping well, you've got like a human attached to your boob at all times, like you just don't want to be touched. And sex is not interesting. And then you have dad who is experiencing a transition all his own. And often a dynamic that I see is that the husband or the dad is also sleep deprived and tired, but that desire for sex does not change for him in the same way that it changes for the mom. And that's where the relationships become really complicated. It's like, bam, desire discrepancy emerges. You have a husband who hasn't really changed much in how much he's wanting sex, or a wife who hasn't changed much if she wasn't the one who carried the child. And then you have a woman who just gave birth, who's sleep deprived and breastfeeding, who doesn't want to have sex at all. And I think that's where the conversation really needs to happen. Is around like, how is our relationship being impacted by bringing babies into the world?
For sure. So for the for the guy who may be watching and who is thinking she never wants to, or she's always too tired, or I always get the excuse, or I get rejected a lot, and my sex drive feels high, or she says it's too high, like, what do you want to say to him? What can he be doing?
The first thing that I want to say to him is that his struggle is real. And even though I think the higher desire partner often gets the better end of the deal society-wise, like they're kind of viewed as the more normal partner, I think that sometimes the higher desire partner is actually struggling much more profoundly than the low desire partner, because they have this need for connection, this need for sexual expression that isn't being met. And that is incredibly hard. And it's not about, sometimes I'll hear the lower desire partner say, like, you're being really selfish. They'll say that to the higher desire partner. Which in her context, I'm like, okay, I can see how that looks to be true.
Right.
But then when I look at it from the higher desire partner's perspective, I'm like, you are not being selfish at all. Like, this is a real need for you that's not being met, and you're having a really hard time voicing that. So that's the first thing I want to say is, like, I feel you, and that's painful, and your struggle is real.
And it's probably very lonely.
Oh my God. Yeah. So lonely. Yeah. So lonely. And it's hard to be rejected all the time.
I imagine.
And I think that happens often as the higher desire partner is like, can we have sex? Can we have sex? Can we have sex? And the lower desire partner is like, I've told you no, and I'm not going to tell you no again. Stop asking.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That burns when you're the person who's, asking for your need to be met.
Right. So what can he do? What's maybe one or two things he could do starting today?
Yeah. Starting today. So thing number one is sit down with your partner and have an honest conversation about your desire discrepancy. So instead of framing the conversation as, you need to have more sex with me, really try saying, hey, I've noticed that we have different levels of desire for sex, and I'm wondering if we can work together to create a sexual relationship that works for both of us.
Love it. You make that sound way too easy.
I do. Yeah. And it's going to be super messy. Write a letter if you need to. Like, I am a total advocate of when we have to have conversations that are hard, write down what you want to say and read it. There's no shame in doing that.
That's great.
If my husband were sitting here right now and I had to share this with him from a personal place and not a professional place, I would be like a bubbling mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't expect it to sound like as hallmarky as, I'm able to make it sound right now.
Okay.
So I would do that. I would highlight for your partner that you see there's a discrepancy, and you know that neither one of you is right or wrong, but something needs to change so that the relationship works better.
Okay.
And then I think something else that you could start doing differently today as a higher desire partner is to ask your partner, what are they needing to feel more intimately connected with you? And what are they needing to free up more time and energy to access relaxation and mindfulness so that they can be more physical? So it might be as practical as, I need you to take over washing the bottles, or I need you to take over walking the dog, or it might be a chore that you can take off their plate so they have 30 minutes more a week to try to get in touch with their sexuality. Those are drops in the bucket. Like, I want to really normalize that it is a process that can take time and creativity and trial and error.
For sure.
If you start with the conversation and you frame the conversation in a way that normalizes both of you, good things will happen.
Love that. Love that. And again, a big reason why I do these weekly midday love breaks is because people are like, okay, but I want to do something different. So I love that you're giving these, even though they're drops in the bucket, they're drops, and their bucket may be like dried and cracking. So they need a little bit of drops in there. They'll take it. So
absolutely. And when you start adding drops, it's like the effect is exponential, right? Yes. So if you make like one change turns into 2 changes, 2 changes turns into 5 changes, 5 turns into 10. And you create this positive feedback loop that we all should need to replicate in our relationships.
For sure. So what about our gal who's watching, who may feel, and I'm totally like gender stereotyping, but you guys get the get the gist of it. But we have a gal who's like, he wants it way too much. I can't get there. Maybe I don't want to get there. What would you say to her, and what can she maybe start doing?
Yeah. So first, I just want to second that we definitely are talking in gender stereotypes. It is true that more often than not, it is the woman who has the lower desire and the male who has higher desire. But frequently it's the opposite. And I have tons of couples who I work with in my practice where the woman is like desperate for more sex and the guy is totally overwhelmed. So that's my message, is like, don't feel like you have to fit into these categories. Wherever you're at is totally normal for you. But what do I say to the person with lower desire? I say, I totally 100% understand how overwhelming it feels to have your partner asking you to meet a need that you don't feel capable of meeting. That is incredibly painful and overwhelming. It is so hard when the person you love is saying, I need this, I need this, I need this. And you check in with your body and you're like, there's no way I can provide that for you right now.
Right.
It's emotionally, it is a devastating experience when couples are going through it. But it is possible to get more in touch with your sexuality as a person with low desire. So I would love to talk for just a second about the different types of sexual desire. Because I think it's often really transformative when women realize that it's not that they have low desire, it's just that they have a different type of desire than their male partners.
Okay.
So in a nutshell, and just stop me if I'm going on too long about this. But there are 2 main types of sexual desire. We have spontaneous desire, which is the type of desire you see in the movies. You know, when partners, like, they look at each other from across the room and they're like, bam, I'm ready for sex right now.
Right.
The desire for sex emerges spontaneously. So for these folks, arousal, or what colloquially is referred to as like, I'm horny, precedes wanting to have sex, right?
Okay.
So I notice a feeling of arousal in my body, and that feeling tells me that I want to be having sex right now. And then I pursue sex.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Totally, 100%.
So that's spontaneous desire. And I want you to think of that, and to use an analogy, as a microwave, right? Yeah. So you pop food in the microwave and you hit 30 seconds and bam, it's hot and it's ready to go. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we have the second type of sexual desire, which is called responsive desire. And this is where a majority of women experience sexual desire. So responsive desire means that we don't feel a desire for sex until we're already invested in a sexual context.
Okay.
Right? So if I don't feel, people with low desire, they don't feel horny, right? They don't ever like, they're not sitting at work and then they're like typing an email and they're like, ooh, I really want sex right now.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. But if they put themselves into a sexual context, so if they're having a romantic evening and their partner's giving them a shoulder rub and they're deep breathing and they're relaxing and then their partner says, hey, do you want to take this a little further?
Yeah.
She's like, actually, I think that I do. Like, I think I actually want to do that. So her desire is responsive to being in a context where sex feels like a really good idea.
Yeah.
And the analogy here is to think about putting food into an oven, right? So before you put food into an oven, you have to preheat it. Mm-hmm. And preheating can take like 20 or 30 minutes. And then we put the food in the oven, and it takes like 4 times as long to cook the food as it does when we pop it in the microwave.
Right.
So I want you to think about your sexual encounters. Think about sexual encounters that have worked for you, and ask yourself, was I a microwave or was I an oven? Did I pop on really quickly and everything kind of flowed really organically? Or did it take a lot of prep work and preheating before my body was really wanting and craving sex? Neither one is right or wrong or better than the other.
Right.
I'm like firmly in the responsive desire team. And I know, like, when I figured that out about myself, it was like a weight had been lifted.
Wow.
I didn't feel so broken anymore. I wasn't measuring myself to this expectation that I was literally never going to measure up to.
Yeah.
So I think that it's crucial, as we're speaking to this low desire woman or man, just to say, like, take a second to assess, like, where you're at and what you need to get in touch with your sexuality.
Right.
And whatever that is, awesome. Like, you are totally normal and fine just the way you are.
Oh my gosh. And I imagine too, for even, the high desire or the low desire, there's going to be times when they can flip flop, right? I imagine, like, there's times when the person who maybe is typically the responsive desire type, like, maybe one night something happens and they're just like, bam, spontaneous, right?
Mm-hmm,
like, so I imagine they can kind of fluctuate a little bit. Would you say?
I think they can. I think your style is your style.
Okay.
And there are moments when you might experience a different type of desire.
Sure.
But there's also, I think, there's a little caveat here, because, like, what you're describing, if I think of myself as a responsive desire type of person, and then one night I'm like, bam, hit with this spontaneous desire for sex.
Sure.
My guess is that things have been going really well in that relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling really connected, and I'm feeling really attuned to my partner. And in that sense, it's not really spontaneous at all. It's
true.
actually just emerging from a context in the relationship that I find arousing.
Totally.
So yes, I want to say, like, there are a small percentage of people that can flip-flop between desire types. But more often than not, you'll find that you respond to one type or the other.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I'm taking a look at time, and I'm like, I could do this for like days with you. So this is amazing, Megan. But I guess I want to kind of wrap up by just saying, if people listening and watching today take away only one thing, what do you want them to take away from our talk today?
Okay, I'm going to give them 2 things. Sorry.
That's totally fine. No, that's great.
So thing number 1 is that you are totally normal. And you are not broken, and there is nothing wrong with who you are as a sexual person. If you are distressed about how you're feeling in your sexual body, there are things you can do with a sex therapist to get you aligned. But just because you're distressed doesn't mean you're broken. So that's my first message. And my second message, or my second takeaway, is that if you are experiencing any sexual stress in your relationship with your partner, start the conversation in a space that is not judgmental, is not critical, is not accusatory. Just start by stating an observation. I'm noticing that we're struggling with sex in this way, and sex is an important part of our relationship. So I want us to mutually commit to working to improve this together. The more honest and transparent you can be about what you're experiencing in your relationship, the better things are going to be. And then that positive feedback loop is going to be created where you're just noticing change after change after change.
Yeah.
So you're normal, and talk about what you're experiencing. Don't suffer in silence.
Oh my gosh. And I hope everyone tuning in is really hearing this, and hope you've jotted down notes today, because these are really powerful keys. These are tools that you guys can start doing today. So Megan, thank you so much. Can you tell our audience where can they find out more about you if they want to reach out and just learn more about you?
Absolutely. So thank you, Robyn, by the way. It's so great to have a space to talk about sexual health and to spread the good word about what normal sex looks like. So I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And if you want to know more about me, or you want to keep up with some of like the resources or the writing that we're producing, you can check out my practice website, which is www.CCST, stands for Center for Couples and Sex Therapy. So ccstpdx.com. And maybe we can pop that in the comments as well. But feel free to go there. If you have any questions, feel free. You can email me through the website. And I'm happy to be a resource about what good sexual health really looks like.
Thank you, Megan, so much. I'm so honored to have you here with me today. And I have learned so much. Yeah, I've even learned so much too. So thank you so much. And we're going to have to do this again. We'll have to do a part 2.
Absolutely. It's good to see you. And thanks for doing the Midday Love Break. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye. See you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye. Oh my gosh, you guys. How freaking amazing was that? We went on longer than usual, but I couldn't stop that. That was so much rich information that I'm just hoping that you guys took the time to hang in there, listen, and really listen from a receiving place of like, I can receive this information, not getting defensive, not thinking about, oh yeah, but my partner, like Megan did such a beautiful job of kind of what I was hoping and thought she would do, which is normalizing a lot of our struggle and giving you the tools, telling you just kind of how to get started, how to maybe broach the conversation, how to start creating change, you guys, how to start connecting deeply with your partner and creating a really enjoyable, healthy, whatever you want to call it, sex life. So hopefully you guys got some tools on how to have an epic sex life, even when your sex drives do not match, when there's a high desire and a low desire. I'm so grateful to have Megan join us today. And again, if you want to be one of the first to find out about the topics, or if you want to send in some questions and get your, if you want to have a specific topic that is actually focused on, and I can bring in an expert if it's not my topic, please go to my website, www.thehappycoupleexpert.com. Sign up for a little freebie that I have there. There's the Epic Love Playbook that's on there, and you'll get signed up on my email list. And so you'll be in my community. You'll be the first one to learn about the topics that we're doing on our Midday Love Break. You'll be the first one to learn about different events. And you'll be the first one. It's basically like being on the VIP list of the Happy Couple Expert. Oh, you guys, this has been amazing. My brain is swimming with all of this rich information. And I just want to encourage you guys, if you have questions, it can feel a little vulnerable to ask those questions live. So if you have questions that you want to pop in there, or if you want to private message me or Megan, we're going to put her information up, please do. Like she said, do not suffer in silence. There's no reason. We have so much information out there, and there's so many of us, like Megan and myself, that are happy to provide you guys with the information. All right, you guys. I'm Robyn D'Angelo. This has been your Midday Love Break. I can't wait to see you guys next week. Mwah! Big love. Bye, guys.